Hey there, I'm Lindsay Dreyer, host of the Joyfulpreneur podcast, where I share tips, tricks, and strategies to help women entrepreneurs maximize joy and freedom in their lives and businesses. Let's dive into today's episode. Today on the podcast, we have Racheal Cook, the founder of the CEO Collective and host of the Promote Yourself to CEO podcast. We are diving into a super important issue for women entrepreneurs: ending entrepreneurial poverty amongst women entrepreneurs. I didn't realize the extent of this problem until my conversation with Racheal, so I hope you'll take a listen because it is extremely insightful. Racheal, we are talking about a topic that I think is so important to bring from the shadows into the light today: entrepreneurial poverty, in particular with women entrepreneurs. So can you give us a brief overview of how you define entrepreneurial poverty?
Well, before I get into the overview, let me tell you a little backstory about why I started getting curious about this. Because I have a background in consulting, but I started more in the corporate world. And while I was working for a bigger consulting firm, we were working with small businesses, but small still meaning like businesses that had a lot of employees, dozens, if not hundreds. So when I made the shift into entrepreneurship for myself, I really started getting interested in what was happening for owner-operated businesses or solopreneur businesses, businesses where there really wasn't a lot of team involved. So these are now being defined as micro businesses, technically. And what I discovered was I was actually invited to go to the United States Chamber of Commerce in Washington, D.C. And I was on a panel with 3 other women entrepreneurs talking about my experience growing my business and the type of business I've built for myself. And I'm in this room. It's in a amazing, beautiful, historic building right off the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Like there is a massive U.S. flag in the back. There are like 200 people in the audience for this luncheon style event. And I was sharing how I had built this coaching consulting business, working 25 hours a week. I was paying myself my former corporate consulting salary, so a multiple 6-figure salary. My husband had just retired to come home, so he quit his job as a teacher to stay at home with our 3rd child. And I also had twins. So I was sharing this with a room full of women, and they were so fascinated by that I was like, okay, what is happening? I literally, after that event, it was supposed to be a 1-hour event. It took me 2 hours to leave the venue because they were following me into the bathroom to ask questions about, how do you have so much time? How are you doing this in 25 hours a week? How are you making that kind of personal take-home pay? I have a 7-figure business and I'm barely paying myself a thing. Started to get really curious about that. And I wanted to dig into more of the research about what specifically was happening for women entrepreneurs, because clearly I had struck a nerve here and they were going, that's what we wanted. That's why we left whatever we were doing before, because we wanted freedom. We wanted freedom to work with who we want. We wanted freedom to do work that we enjoy. We wanted freedom to make our own schedules, be able to work from wherever it is we need to work. And the biggest reason that women entrepreneurs want freedom is 35% of us have children at home. So we are the primary caregivers for children, even if they're in school. You know, we all know raising a family, running a household, we are still the default parent the majority of the time. And then what's really interesting, so that's 35% have children at home, school-age children. Another 25% are the caregiver for an elder adult.
Yes.
For an older parent, for an older relative, which again, these 2 things really impact women in the workplace, whether you are employed by somebody or working for yourself and running your own business, because they impact what we are available for, right? So this is why most women have started businesses, is for the freedom and the flexibility. Money is kind of on the list of things, usually comes in 3rd or 4th in most research. So I started digging into the research and realized a lot of things that were really interesting. The research I started finding, this was 2014 when I went to that event, I've discovered that 75% of women entrepreneurs are not making more than $50,000 a year. And this is women entrepreneurs who have an owner operated business. So they're not employer businesses. They don't have employees. Maybe they have an assistant, a VA, a couple independent contractors, but the majority of them are not making $50,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Only 12% were making over $100,000 a year. And that is gross annual revenue. Only 2 to 3% were breaking the 7-figure mark.
Wow. So that's not net profit. That's gross income.
And this is the distinction, because this is where I think a lot of small business owners, especially again, micro business owners who again came for flexibility and freedom first, they might not have realized that to make the type of money they want to make, it's not just about what your business brings in, it's about what you bring home.
Exactly.
So $50,000 a year in top line revenue, by the time you pay taxes, by the time you pay operating expenses, by the time you pay any legal fees or you pay any contractors, honestly, you're lucky if you're paying yourself $20,000 out of that.
Yep, absolutely.
And so we have a real problem here where, one, a lot of these small businesses are not setting their sights high enough to make the type of money they need to make that will allow them to build a support system that makes the business sustainable without their time and energy. And this is where entrepreneurial poverty comes into play. So my definition of entrepreneurial poverty is taking it beyond just the numbers of the fact that the majority of owner-operated women businesses are not making enough money. Surely not making enough money to replace if you had a former professional salary, corporate salary, which most of my clients do. And most women do. Women still are coming out with college degrees at highest rates ever before. So these are not people going into starting businesses generally who are uneducated. Usually they are educated multiple degrees. When
Absolutely.
I go with these women entrepreneurs, they're like, oh yeah, I have this bachelor's degree and I got this master's degree. And by the way, I have all these credentials, right, that served them well in corporate until they got to the point where the traditional 9-to-5 no longer worked for them. So they're not making enough money to replace what they might have made in a professional or a corporate salary. They're not making enough money to hire the support they need so that they truly have flexibility. Because let's be honest, anybody who has children at home or is a caregiver, you know that when school calls and says you have to pick up a kid, you have to shuffle everything around and make that happen, right? If a kid decides to come home with whatever crud they picked up in school, it throws off your whole week. And as someone I'm definitely the sandwich generation, I have a fully disabled mother I'm responsible for. I have had many times where I get a call from her nurse saying, Mom fell, we're taking her to the hospital to get an x-ray, and I have to drop everything and drive to go get to her. So these are very real challenges. And if you don't have the money to really reinvest into building a support system in your business, then you're creating this kind of system in which there's really no freedom or flexibility, because it all depends on your ability to be there 24/7 for your business. And this is what leads us to the feeling of we have the entrepreneurial poverty of time. We're simply working way more than we imagined we would have to keep our business running. A lot of the women I talk to, they have never really tracked their time. They're not always aware of how much time they are working in their business. But the minute I ask them to start tracking their time and they realize, oh, they've always got their phone in their hand. They've always got their laptop nearby. They're checking in on things multiple times through the day. And it's those little insidious check-ins that start to really stack up and add up. So it's not uncommon for a lot of women entrepreneurs to be working all the time. They feel like they're on call to their business, which leads to the entrepreneurial poverty of energy. If you don't have the energy to do the highest value work, because you're always feeling on call, you don't have the resources to hire a support system, then you start to find yourself on the fast track to burnout. And burnout is a clinical condition. It takes up to 3 years to fully recover from burnout. It is not just, I need a week away. It is, my body is so shot, my nervous system is so shot that I cannot show up the way I want to, not just for my business, not just for my clients, but for my family, for my kids, for my parents, for whoever in my ecosystem depends on me. So those are the 3 parts of entrepreneurial poverty I'm especially concerned with. They are very intertwined. You can't find entrepreneurial abundance in any of those without looking for it in all 3. So you can't just make more money and not solve the time and energy. You have to do all 3 in order to truly get where you want to go in your business.
Do you think that there is a short-term pain for a long-term gain in terms of really intentionally working hard to get financially sustainable so you can then get that support staff? You can then start outsourcing, you can start delegating, you can perhaps hire a VA or a social media manager or something like that. Do you see clients or do you see people you work with really have like a sprint where they're focusing so hard on revenue so they can get to a point where they can get their time back?
This is such a great question, and it leads me down 2 different mindsets. Okay. The first is the hustle mindset. The hustle mindset says, if I just work harder, I will get where I need to go. If I just put my head down and do all of these things, if I double my effort, I'll double my results, right? And so this is where we start to see people getting in these just very single track of, I'm going to do everything. I am going to brute force, try to hustle my way out of this problem. The challenge here is brute force will only get you so far. Imagine brute force for a year, right? A year of saying, oh, maybe when things calm down, or sending emails, I'm slammed for the next few weeks, but it should get calmer after that. It never gets calmer after that. If you're in hustle mode, it never gets calmer. So brute force hustle mode does not work. You have to really shift your entire perspective here. And this is where I really love coming in and working with people, because we have a more sustainable approach. And the first step in a sustainable approach is to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Press pause and really pull your head out of the day-to-day of your business and start looking more big picture. The reason brute force doesn't work is because it's just about volume. If I just do more, I will get to where I want to go. But there's no discernment there. There's no interest in quality, right? Should I do 5 Instagram posts a day? Or should I focus on 3 really impactful Instagram posts that actually fit into a framework that is growing my business? So this is what we do with our clients in the CEO Collective. We always tell them, you need to slow down. You need to stabilize your business, which means really get a handle on what is going on. You can't stabilize by guessing at what is working. You can't stabilize by not looking at your numbers. You can't stabilize by not knowing your metrics. Like, you really have to have a strong foundation of where your business is. And that is essential so that we can then determine what are the key levers we need to pull in order to grow, in order to scale from there.
Yeah, you can't stabilize in survival mode when your nervous system is completely shot and you're just panicking and everything's an emergency and you have no energy. You have to take that step back, and it is like taking a retreat. You have to take a little mini retreat and take that 30,000 foot view of your life, business, and do some visioning, like figure out what you want. And like, what's your ideal life and business look like? And I don't think we do that enough. And I don't think it's our fault. First, I'd like to say that women, we have a lot of systemic things working against us. We are the default caregivers. We are the default household runners. And I think that demand is a real one. So I am actually in a very similar position to you where I have my husband as the primary parent. He has been the primary parent for 5 years. And I am curious I think for a lot of women entrepreneurs, or maybe some of them, it is like the dream to have their partner be at home.
Oh, what they don't know about this whole dynamic.
Oh, it is a total flip, right? Like the mindset flip of you're the breadwinner, you're the stay-at-home parent. It is definitely a flip. So I am curious because you're talking about how when women were coming up to you at the Chamber of Commerce, were they more in awe of the fact that you worked 25 hours a week, or were they in awe of the fact that you had a stay-at-home husband?
I think I kind of broke a lot of like paradigms that they had been operating from, to be honest. And I've seen that most of my career has been that way because the dynamic in my life is so different than what most people have even thought about.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And when people learn that my husband, I mean, he left his career, he was a 7th grade English teacher in a public school in Richmond, Virginia. So he, for decades, had been working with 90, 100 13-year-olds at a time. Can you imagine? I have 13-year-old twins now, and I'm like, I don't know how you handled teaching 7th grade for so long because they are a lot of work. It's very interesting when people find out that's our dynamic. And you can have the most progressive, supportive husband in the world, but they still need to unpack and unlearn that internalized patriarchy that is very, very entrenched. Remember, just as we are conditioned to be the default parent, we are conditioned to run the house, they are conditioned to not do those things. And to be really confused for a while when the dynamic shifts. This is something I probably need to talk about a lot more. My husband has written a little bit about it for my blog, just because it is something that comes up so much. And I think a lot of people think that it's this glamorous idea, but I'm here to tell you, like, it is hard and it is a major dynamic shift. Even again, if you have the most progressive husband on the planet, they're going to have to do a lot of their own work to be on the same page with you. And in my position, I have a lot of friends who as their businesses grew, their husbands decided to leave their jobs and come work with them inside the business.
Yeah.
And that's a different dynamic than what I have, right?
Same.
So my
husband does not work with me at all. I could never have that happen, actually. Like, that would not work for me.
Like, we tried for a little bit, and then we realized that the most important thing for us and our definition of success was our marriage first and then our family. And so we realized that we needed to focus on that dynamic and not have me be kind of like the boss, because that was a dynamic we couldn't handle. So I think it's a little different for every single person. For us right now, I mean, he loves being a stay-at-home dad. It was a lifesaver the last few years. We ended up homeschooling our kids for 3 years. They just went back to school this year. And the fact that he's a former teacher made that 1,000 times easier. Like, that was a major privilege that we had. The fact that one of the parents could be on point for the last few years, especially because in my work, I feel like I was really supporting, like, almost business therapist for so many people as we've navigated the last few years.
It's been exhausting, hasn't it? I do feel like we just have this collective exhaustion over the past 3 years where we're in these positions to support people in their businesses, and we're taking on their emotional baggage. And I mean, I'm happy to do it, but it's like, I feel like there definitely is this trickle down of just everyone's so tired.
Absolutely. And if you are a support person, you're holding other people's emotions. It's just like therapists know they need a therapist too.
Yes.
I think if you are in any way supporting entrepreneurs, who we are the front lines of the economy, right? Like, you hear all the time that small businesses are what built this country, and we are. Like, we are the ones that primarily provide employees and services and all sorts of things. But we're the first to feel any sort of uncertainty. We're the first to feel any sort of rocky economy, or if, people are getting uncertain about making big purchases or buying things. We're the first ones to feel it much faster than big corporations with deep pockets. So it is a very emotional thing. And I'm constantly telling clients, like, we need not just our support system in our business of like our assistant and our operations manager and graphic designers and writers or whatever you need behind the scenes. You need a support system around you for you as the leader, because as your business grows, you have you leading your family on one side. So you've got to be grounded and present for your family and your kids because they're feeling it, right? They're feeling the craziness of the world right now. Then you've got your team depending on you, who they depend on you for their livelihood, right? So you've got to be present and supportive and able to navigate their emotions and their heightened worries. And then you've got your clients and your community, and you've got to be able to navigate. That is a lot of emotions coming at you. So we need our own support system. And this includes a therapist. This includes a coach. This includes having, if you have business BFFs or a mastermind group, like, who's your sounding board? This is one thing I talk about all the time because I feel like it's really easy to isolate yourself.
It's so lonely. It can get really lonely. Yeah.
And you can't, because if we get isolated and we don't have anyone to talk to, right? Especially if you don't have anyone who understands what it's like to be a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could go to my husband and be like, oh my God, I'm so stressed about this. This happened. One client just, and I can just verbal vomit everything that happened of the day, but he doesn't understand because he's not in it. Right. He can kind of be like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened. But having people in your corner who, I have a group of amazing women who are in my text messages on Voxer with me, and we're constantly checking in and supporting each other because we are carrying a lot of emotions from other people.
And our own stuff. I mean, it's like we're carrying so much. So I think that there were a lot of women, due to the systemic factors of women are the default caregivers, the default childcare, default household runners, that during COVID lockdown, a lot of women were forced into entrepreneurship. Like, I think that they could no longer be on their corporate track. And so their default, the default was to just make women the person who's going to pick up the pieces at home and with the kids. And I think that this gets into your point of time poverty and energy poverty too, where we have a lot of these unintentional entrepreneurs where they just did it out of survival and they needed to be somewhat productive, whether for their mental health, whether for the financial health of their family. And I think that where those entrepreneurs are coming out of the clouds and like coming out of the survival mode, and they're like, what did I just create over the past 2 or 3 years? Like, What is this beast? And I do think we're at this like turning point where these women are thinking, okay, can't go back to the corporate world because that's just not a world I want to get back into. But I'm feeling like an impoverished entrepreneur right now. So how do I get to that level of success again? So I'm curious, like, what are your top tips for that person? Because I feel like they really exist, and it's like they're in this in-between and kind of catch-22 situation where they have to make entrepreneurship work, or they have to go back to their life on the corporate track, which they were miserable in.
And let's be honest, they need to, because most families in this country require 2 incomes in order to function. Like, straight up, if you have kids at home, I remember when my kids were little, I was paying $2,000 a month on daycare. That is crazy town, that it should be that expensive. If anybody who has my mother who has full-time nursing care, it is $15,000 to $16,000 a month to cover her nursing care because we don't qualify for any additional support. We make too much money to get any help. So we're paying, almost $200,000 a year just in keeping 24-hour nursing care with her. It is it is incredible the demands on our families right now. So yeah, I love how you said unintentional entrepreneurs. I call them accidental entrepreneurs because I think the idea that a lot of businesses are started out of, I have this passion, I'm going to do this thing. Like following your passion sounds great when things are going well.
Yes.
Right? When you have tons of flexibility and no pressure and no responsibilities, like follow your passion. Good for you. Like at some point, things get real and you have to figure out how to make this work. So my first thing for anybody who's this unintentional entrepreneur is to get intentional. And the first place I always start is, what is your definition of success?
Amen. Yes.
If you can't decide this, then someone else is going to decide it for you. Either you're just going to follow the crowd, which most of it is noise and is all hustle, right? You're either going to default to what you're hearing everybody else saying and then get there and wonder, like, what am I doing? What am I creating? Or you're just never going to be happy. Like you're going to continue to follow this path of nothing is ever enough. Nothing's good enough. This isn't what I want. So get intentional with your definition of success. I actually have 5 areas I think about for this, because I don't start with how much money you should make.
No, you should never do that. Yeah.
I think if you're starting with how much money you want to make, then you're actually making it harder for you to get clarity on the how you're going to get there. So when I think about your definition of success, the first thing I want you to think about is your life and your lifestyle. What does your lifestyle look like? And if you need to do the ideal day or ideal week exercise, like literally Google it. What does your ideal day look like? What does your ideal week look like? And think about that. Don't go pie in the sky. There's a lot of great things about mindset and thinking bigger. But if you want it to be like, in 12 months, I could live this.
Yes.
And the reason I like that timeline is because it just brings it a little bit closer. So it feels more achievable. It feels more like, okay, currently I'm working 45 hours a week. I want to be able to work 30 hours a week. I love this because it's a constraint, and constraints are helpful. If you can do everything and brute force your way to get to your revenue result, then you'll burn out. There's a million ways to get that revenue result. But if you have to constrain yourself with how much time you want to work, what do you want that lifestyle to look like? Now we have more information to help us make better decisions about how we're going to get there. So what do you want your life and lifestyle to work? This includes like, how many hours do you want to work? What are you doing in the hours you don't work? Are there any lifestyle changes or upgrades you want to make? Is there anything that would make your lifestyle better or easier or more convenient for you? Is there any time off you want to have on a regular basis? Are there any major lifestyle changes that you want to have? Figure out how much time and how much money those are going to make for you. You might be surprised that a lot of them don't take much money in order to make them happen.
Right.
This is what always surprises people.
In our coaching, it's your joy list. Like what makes you really happy. And a lot of people are like, it's just like a 30-minute walk in nature. Well, guess what? That's free. Put it on your schedule. Yeah. Put it on your schedule. Go for a walk.
Exactly. So there's so many things you can do that will improve your overall life and lifestyle. And I think when we only focus on things that are like, I want to buy a massive house or I want to buy a fancy car, like think a little bit bigger, like outside of stuff. Think about the quality of life that you actually want. The next thing I think is really important is health and well-being. So what is your definition of success for health and well-being? I have several chronic illnesses that make this at the forefront for me because I physically can't do more than I can do. So if you have any sort of chronic pain or chronic fatigue, you know what I'm talking about. But this really limits my capacity. It limits the times a month that I'm at my highest performance. Other times a month, I just know I'm going to be a little off and I'm not going to be able to do like that higher level work. Mm-hmm. So what do you do to feel healthy, to take care of your health, including your mental health and your well-being? This could be, I'll just share some things for me. And I also want to share a caveat. This is not about how much you weigh or what size your jeans are. This is about how you feel in your body, how you are prioritizing your health and well-being, because I believe you can be healthy at any size. I am a size 16 and I am totally happy with that. I'm not ever focused on a diet mentality here. I'm focused on how can I make sure I'm maximizing my energy and my clarity, my brain clarity. So a few key things here. Am I drinking my water every day? Am I sleeping enough every day? Am I taking my supplements? My supplements cost a lot because I have several chronic illnesses. So that's something that's going to cost money for me. Are there any health practices that help you? So I've made the decision years ago to work with a functional medicine doctor. They don't take insurance, so I have to pay out of pocket for that. I also have regular practices that really help me manage my chronic pain. So I budget in having chiropractic care, a massage, acupuncture. Those things keep me well. They make me have the highest level energy I, as someone with chronic illness, can possibly have. And if I were to take those away, I guarantee in 4 to 6 weeks, I would not be getting out of the bed. I would be really struggling. So I want you to prioritize your health and wellness. Think about how you're taking care of yourself, how you're sleeping, how you're resting, how you're nourishing yourself, what foods make you feel good. And dark chocolate can be on that list.
Oh, yeah. Dark chocolate
right?
can be on the list. I also think a shift for me with this was exercise doesn't have to be what you traditionally think of as exercise. And when I shifted to, I just want to move my body 30 minutes a day, that was a massive shift for me. And because I have 3 young kids that are 8, 5, and 2, it is easy for me to get that in with them. Like that actually is not that difficult. We can go for a walk. We can ride bikes. We can kick the ball in the yard. And when I shifted that focus to just enjoying my body and doing things that are fun and joyful, exercise became not exercise anymore. And it was a major shift for me, like health and wellness. And that was something that I think women are really hard on ourselves. We're like, it's not a workout unless I'm in the gym, or it's not a workout unless I'm doing a video at home, or it's not a workout unless this. But just focus on moving your body, whatever feels good for you.
Yeah, humans didn't start going to a gym until the recent few decades, y'all. Like, what do you think we've done for,
I know.
a millennia or more? Like, it has always been daily movement. So how are you getting that daily movement in? And I agree. I'm a walker. I go on a walk in the morning. I go on a walk in the evening, and I wear my Oura ring all the time because it helps me track a lot of things. So I'm just trying to get movement through my day. That's what I focus on. But I do know that the mornings I go out and get that early morning sunlight and I get that movement early in the morning, that can set the pace for my whole
day.
It
absolutely does. And it's proven that when you move your body, you move stress out of your body. And if you just sit, that cortisol just builds up and builds up and builds up and builds up. And you just have to move. You have to move it. Complete the stress cycle, baby.
Exactly. You have to move things out of your body because it does stagnate. Okay, so there's 3 more things for your definition of success. If you haven't already been like, okay, I didn't know I could have this much in my definition of success. Welcome to my world. I go deep into things. This is not surface level. So my next area is relationships. And I have this area, I think it's so important because at the end of the day, on your deathbed, who is going to be there? And I know it might sound morbid, but I've had a lot of loss in my life. And I have witnessed people who are literally like, I wish I would have had more time with my kids. I wish I would have spent more time with my friends. I've seen the difference between people who have prioritized relationships and people who at the end didn't have those relationships there for them. So who are the top 5 most important people in your life? This can be anybody in your life that really deserves to be there. Like, it's hard to maintain a lot of relationships. Let's be honest. Like, it's okay to have lots of acquaintances and friends, but let's talk about deep, meaningful relationships that are truly your support system. Who are they? And how do you want to spend time with them? So for me, it is my husband. Like, my marriage is top priority for us. How do we want to spend time together? Once a year, we go on a honeymoon where our in-laws take the kids, and we go on a honeymoon for 3 to 4 days by ourselves. So we always have a solo, couples only getaway. And that is one of the ways that we prioritize our marriage. We always have date night once a month. That is how we prioritize our marriage. Then I have my kids. I have 3 kids. And they are very much individuals now. So it used to be I could just lump them all in one category, like kids. But now they're 13, and 10. Like, they want solo time with me. So how am I prioritizing time with them? I can't tell you how many, we went to the Comic-Con convention so that we could dress up in cosplay. I mean, we have done so many things, but it's that time with them because I want my kids when they leave the house to go to college or whatever, I want them to want to come spend time with me. And
Exactly.
I have to prioritize now in order to build a relationship that will lead to that.
Mm-hmm.
So how am I prioritizing that? We're doing things together. It's quality time. It's solo quality time. It could be as big as tickets to go to a cosplay convention, which is a whole nother thing. Or it could be as simple as like, I will take them to run errands one day. I just took my youngest with me and picked him up from school. We went and ran errands, but he got to pick out where we're going for a snack and he got to pick out another place to go while we were out. So it's just that quality time, right? And I think about that for all of my relationships. My sisters, my nieces and nephews are really important to me. I have some friends who are on that list where it's like once a month, let's have lunch together.
Mm-hmm.
Those relationships are so crucially important. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of business owners, especially, we tend to just get so busy that we don't put it on the calendar. Put those things on the calendar. Put them on the calendar. If you want those relationships with your kids down the road, schedule a mom and me date on a regular basis. I promise it will be a game changer, especially as your kids get into these teenage years where they need to know you're a safe place to land.
Absolutely. It's so important.
So important. So that's relationships. I always think about that. And that helps me so much to have clarity. Again, it's constraints. I know my kids are in this space. They're 13, and 10. I have a window right now before they get ready to leave the house. So this is dictating a lot about how I run my business and the decisions I make. I'm making the trade-off time with my kids right now over some other things I could take on in my business. The fourth thing that I think about is going to be creativity. I think creativity is so important and we lose this. When is the last time you had something you did for fun? This is a huge part of regulating your nervous system and managing stress.
Mm-hmm.
So what creative projects are you doing, not so you can turn them into another side hustle, but so you can actually just have fun? So if you're not sure what they are, try some things. What have you always wanted to learn? What does your inner child want? My inner child decided she wanted Legos. So I went out and they have these new sets that are like flower bouquets. I need to bring them in the office.
Oh, fun.
I now have done, and they're all on like my piano at home. I've done 4 Lego bouquets. I love Legos. I think Legos are the best. And so now I have a whole Lego display at home that are mom's Legos, in addition to, all the boys' Legos. I've decided I liked painting. I went online and I found some paint by number kits. I cannot tell you how relaxing it is to get a glass of wine and sit at the counter and do a paint by number. These things are simple, but they're so fun and they're so relaxing. And they also like activate a different part of your brain that is really hard to tap into. I find that the more I do these creative things, the more ideas and insights and clarity I get about all sorts of other stuff. Like if I need a breakthrough or I'm stuck with something, it's like, what room needs to be painted? Because I will come up with the solution as soon as I'm changing the color on the wall. I don't know how. So what creativity is important to you, and make sure you're budgeting time and money for that. Again, it can be as simple as buying yourself a Lego set. It can be going on a writing retreat. It could be all sorts of things. The final area I really think is important for your personal definition of success is your own personal growth and spirituality. I think personal growth and spirituality are very connected. It's all about, being the highest and best version of yourself, which for me means plugging into something bigger than you. And what makes sense for you? Is this tapping into the religion you're a part of? This is going to church or going to synagogue or anything? Is this going on mindfulness programs, like going to a yoga retreat, going on a meditation retreat? Is this working with a spiritual teacher? Is this just working on your mindset? Like, what are things that keep you inspired and uplifted? You get to choose. There's no right or wrong way to have that connection to yourself and to grow yourself. So I think if we can think about all 5 of those areas of your definition of success with the constraint of just a year from now, what would look different, then we get some really interesting data back, right? So now we know what your life and lifestyle is going to look like. We know how you're prioritizing your health and wellness. We know your relationships that you're going to make space for, make time for. We know how you're going to have a creative outlet, again, discharge stress, and we know how you're going to grow and connect to your spirituality. If you can define those things and tell them to us in what you want to see different in a year, now we can actually go, okay, with this information, how are we going to achieve the revenue goal you believe? And this is where we start to ask very different questions than I'm just going to do more of what I'm doing. Because if you do what you did, you get what you got. So if you're not happy in any of those 5 areas right now, and you just keep doing, you keep hustling, you just keep, trying to brute force your way into the business you want, it won't happen. We need to pull back. We need to pause. We need to reflect. And then we need to go, okay, what are the things that need to change in order for this definition of success to match up with the revenue goal I have or where I want my business to go? And chances are some things are got to change in order for those two to come together and be aligned. And that's really the first step in getting more intentional in your business.
It's also so motivating. Like, I think a lot of people don't have that super strong, why am I even doing this? And so I think for that unintentional entrepreneur who started their business just kind of because they had to, this takes that step back and lets them look at, oh, okay, like I'm an entrepreneur because it allows me to have this dream life in these 5 areas. And now I can see what I'm working so hard for, or now I can see what I'm working towards, instead of it just feeling like this kind of aimless shooting in the dark kind of situation. So
absolutely. And I think another important thing when you have clarity on that definition of success is now you can go find people who are aligned to inspire you. Because sometimes it's really hard to see what's possible if you haven't seen somebody walk the path before you. So when you're looking for mentors, when you're looking for people to follow on social media or books that you're going to read or anything, look for people who have a similar definition of success, because they're going to share with you what really unlocked that. They're not going to tell you just to hustle harder or to double down on, doing more and more and more. They're going to say, let's do less, better. And here's the key things that helped me.
I agree. Do less, better. That is amazing. All right. This is such a great conversation. We chatted about not only entrepreneurial poverty, but also how can you get out of it? Like, I think this was just so helpful. And I hope that this helps so many women, whether you're an intentional and you got into entrepreneurship on purpose, or whether you were forced into it. I think you and I are proof that you can really have the life that you want, and you can be an intentional creator of your life as an entrepreneur. And it does give you the power to do that. And I know that if I was on a corporate track, I wouldn't have the life that I love so much right now. And it really is such an awesome opportunity to build whatever freedom and success looks like for you. So that's why I'm so passionate about entrepreneurship for women in particular, is because we get to create our dream lives. We get to play by our own rules, and we can break the rules. Like, that's the really fun part about it.
Yeah. You have to be ready to break the rules in order to get where you want to go. Because if you follow what the majority of people out there say, you're going to have what the majority of people have. And the reality is very few people get to experience the type of business and life that you and I are talking about today, because they're afraid of going against the status quo. They're afraid of breaking the rules. The rules are there to keep us safe, right? That is what they are there for. They're there to say, if you do this, you will do that. You will get that. But if the rules aren't working for you, you've got to come up with your own rules, and you've got to be willing to do the hard things for a short period of time. And making decisions is hard, right? Deciding to do something differently that's not the status quo, it is hard. You might have people who question you. You might have people who doubt you, but the time is going to pass anyway.
Yeah, and you can't listen to the haters. You can't listen to the naysayers. You can't let them into your head or your space, and you can't let them affect you, because if you're coming at it from this just heart-centered vision of what you want your life to look like, that's what you should be working towards. Like, that's your North Star. That is why you are doing this. And so I'm sure you have had your naysayers in your life. I've absolutely had naysayers in my life who told me my business would be out of business in 2 years if I did this. And guess what? Still in business. So I've had tons of people, and honestly, it just fuels my fire. When people tell me I can't, I'm going to prove that I can. So
I'm the same way. And I've been doing this for 15 years now. And I remember so many people literally told me they thought I was having a mental breakdown when I decided to leave corporate consulting and do my own thing. The time is going to pass anyway. 15 years later, I am so glad that younger me had the courage to say, this isn't working for me. This is making me sick. This is going to keep me from being the type of parent I want to be. It's going to destroy my marriage. I have to do something differently, because most people won't make those types of changes. So if you're willing to be brave and be uncomfortable and work through that discomfort, the rewards are so worth it. They're so incredibly worth it.
I think that is a beautiful way to end this. Thank you so much for this awesome conversation. This was so great.
Thank you so much for having me, Lindsay. It was so much fun. And anyone who's listening to this, I would love you to connect with me. I am active on TikTok and on Instagram, so you can find me. I'm sure you'll have all the links and things hooked up.
Yes,
but
in the show notes.
Come DM me and let me know, like, what is your biggest insight or takeaway? I love to connect in the DMs over on the gram and would love to connect with you. And the final thing I'll say, because I think this will be really helpful for your people, Lindsay, is I have a free calculator called the Get Paid Calculator. So once you have done your definition of success, this is the next step.
Perfect.
I'm giving it to you absolutely free. It is a 3-part calculator to help you look at your desired take-home income, then figure out the revenue for your business, and reverse engineer how many sales of what products you need to have in order to achieve that revenue goal. So it's incredibly helpful if you need that clarity on what your revenue goals are going to be.
That's so great. And that is such an awesome tool. And I hope you guys all take advantage of that, because that is the key. Got to know what your goals are and then how much money you need to support your dream life.
Exactly. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Joyfulpreneur podcast. Remember to check the show notes for all the links and resources mentioned in this episode. Your reviews also mean the world to me. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Until next time, stay joyful.